Welcome to Agency Acquisitions and Exits. I'm your host, Peter Lang. If you want to know what it's like to sell to one of the big four, not the big four accounting firms, the big four advertising firms, WPP, Omnicom, Publicis, and IPG, then you don't want to miss Felix's agency exit story to IPG. He has a brilliant agency resume dating back to 1994 when Felix founded what was essentially one of the world's first digital agencies. And as he retired in 2016, he set his sights on a new adventure, and that adventure was 2Y3X, an agency accelerator that brought to market the things that he wished he knew at the very beginning of his agency journey. So let's dive in. Felix, I'm excited to talk to you about what it's like to sell to one of the big four ad networks, one of these big holding companies. You sold to Interpublic.
I did.
Tell us about that.
Do I have to? Yeah, I mean, it was kind of flattering, but I mean, there's a story. So I had started a web design firm in the UK, and my business partner was the guy with all the talent, Jason, and just a brilliant creative, and I was doing the strategy and I was doing the sales, you know, the sort of the classic CEO of a CEO, self-styled CEO of a 3-person startup, right? And eventually we started growing and getting traction, and we started winning some of the world's biggest brands. So Mars Confectionery and Virgin, and I mean, lots, General Motors. We had all these amazing clients, and we started getting a profile. And I had decided that the best way for us to win the world's best brands was to win all of the awards and be known for being an award-winning agency. So I decided that our proposition was going to be the world's most awarded digital agency, right? Which sounded like a good wheeze, and we were kind of winning awards anyway. So I figured that I would make certain that this was going to be true, and hired a couple of interns and set them to entering every award known to humankind anywhere in the world. Now, this was a great wheeze, right? And we started winning awards, and eventually we duly became the world's most awarded digital agency. It was called Head New Media.
Quick interruption on this.
Yeah.
Do you remember how many awards it took to really start?
Well, I know that we won 150 awards, including Cannes, D&AD, New York Festivals Award, Epica, Gold and Silver. I mean, we won tons of globally recognized great awards, but we actually won 150 awards altogether that year. And that was the second year of our agency. Okay. So we were flying high. And we started getting calls from people saying, hey, you're really high profile and really good at what you do, and you've got these amazing clients. Come and join our advertising network because we need digital. And so, and we were being courted. I mean, literally once a week, I'd get a phone call from somebody saying, can we have lunch? So I was having a series of very posh lunches in London, all over London, being courted and feted by all of these companies. And at the time, the 4 holding companies, WPP, Omnicom, Publicis, and Lowe, Interpublic, and Lowe worldwide was the world's most awarded advertising agency. And I figured, do you know what? This would be a good fit. And so I casually mentioned Lowe in a couple of articles so that I knew that it would come across their attention. And lo and behold, and no pun intended, they approached us. They took me for a nice lunch. They took Jason for a nice lunch, and we agreed to do this absurd deal for a multiple of 12 times EBITDA, and went into this deal process honestly thinking we were going to be squillionaires on a yacht this time next year. And just, I mean, loving it.
Unpack that a little bit, because you're in the second year running an agency. You used a brilliant tactic, which has existed for many decades, where you put someone specifically to get you on directory listings or get you awards, someone who makes you look really good. And then you took that unique proposition, which is the most awarded digital agency, and said, now there's a partner we could potentially be acquired by. In year two, as you're being courted, did any imposter syndrome, did any
God, no,
inexperience kick in where you're
not at
like,
all.
we've
Not
only
at
been
all.
doing this for a short period of time and they want to buy us?
I mean, to be fair, I had an agency before that had become very famous indeed. And I think when we were 12 people, we had Microsoft's digital account, right? I mean, we were really, I mean, I had blue hair, you know, I was sort of young and full of ego and sort of a kind of blindness to my own flaws. And we thought that the agency, you know, we thought that why shouldn't we be the best in the world at this stuff? And so we carried ourselves as if we were the best in the world in this. Oh, you know, obviously we weren't, but you know, we had this self-confidence and this swagger that allowed us to get away with this kind of weird posturing that was going on. I mean, I look back at it and obviously I cringe, but at the time we were just having fun. You know, we were winning every pitch that we did. We were producing work and we were winning gold awards at, you know, all of the big festivals and stuff. In fact, we designed the first interactive version of the Cannes Advertising Festival. We did the first interactive kiosks for design and art direction, D&AD, which is the world's biggest creative award. I mean, we were flying. So yeah, I mean, you know, no, I don't think that, I mean, I look back now and think about imposter syndrome. I mean, I feel imposter syndrome these days, and I'm at the other end of a long ass career.
You actually, without planning it, did something that is brilliant, which is you didn't just grow it and have this hubris that you were the best in the world and it would continue to go up. You were talking about selling the business not long after starting the business, which is actually one of the best things you can do, because you're selling so much upside and future potential. And that's how you get higher value, versus a lot of people who try to just build incremental cash flow and revenue from a business for 5 years, 10 years or longer, and then try to sell it. Where's the upside? You've depleted it like a,
Wow.
so you've actually did a really brilliant tactic.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but the reality is we were all of the deal cash that we were going to get. I'll come back to that, right? All of these riches, the yacht, you know, the spare houses and all this kind of stuff that we were imagining, was predicated on future success. So they were buying into our future success because of our momentary fame at the beginning, right?
The prestige that you brought to them.
Completely, right? Yeah. We were bringing to them, you know, so this is the world's 4th largest advertising company, Lowe, which was itself owned by Interpublic, the world's 3rd largest advertising company. The world's most awarded digital company. They did not know anything about digital, right? So we're going into this thinking, hey, we're going to re-educate all these advertising folk. And you know, little old us, by this time 18 people in a loft in Brixton. And what ended up happening was we did this deal, and there was,
explain the deal though. I want to say in sequential order. So you're having these discussions, they're courting you and your partner. You have had an agency prior to this, so you kind of knew a little bit about the end of an agency life and how it could be used. Yeah. Was there anything in this deal, or maybe unpack the deal a bit? Like who did they send to court you? How thick was the agreement that they send you? And what are the things that they wanted you to do that you're like, I found that you're not including that?
So I might not be able to talk about that bit. But I don't know, does this podcast get edited?
It certainly does, but sometimes we edit to emphasize things too. So
So so Frank Lowe sent his number 2, a guy called Mark Cave, really lovely man, really forward-thinking, futurist, brilliant guy. Went on to found his own really successful ad agency. And Mark came and he courted us, and he took me out to the Gavroche for lunch, and really proper sort of 3 Michelin style kind of courtship going on. And they basically said, listen, we're going to make you very, very rich. And we really need to get digital right. And you are, because you've got blue hair, clearly you are the right person for us. So we prematurely had a meeting with Frank Lowe, all of their accountants, the people who are running Lowe & Partners UK. And they said, okay, Felix, you're going to join the board of Lowe & Partners UK. You're going to be on the team. And you'll report into the UK, and it'll be great, and we all get it, and you're the hippest person here, right? And we had this bizarre champagne sort of celebration of we had agreed to do this deal before the deal was done. So at which point the lawyers stepped in. Now, their lawyers, they're very acquisitive, 4th largest network, they knew what they were doing. So I went to London's best media law firm, and I somehow managed to phone to get through to Simon Olswang, who's the founder of Olswang, this great law firm. And I said to him, listen, I'm doing this deal. It's the deal of a century, but I've only got $5,000. Can you do me a fixed price to negotiate this end of the deal? And for some reason, he said yes. And he said, but I'm going to put my most junior person on this deal because he's never done a deal before. So we're going to use it as a teaching experience. I said, great, this sounds fantastic. 7 months later.
Good teaching experience for this young attorney.
Yeah. So this young attorney turns out now to be the owner. Well, he went on to found Longacre Partners, which is one of the biggest PE firms in the UK. Now runs Clarity Capital, which is one of the biggest brokers in the world, actually. An amazing guy called Marcus. And Marcus and I became firm friends during the 7 months of him racking up, whatever it was per hour under a fixed price of $5,000. Anyway, we still joke about this whenever we bump into each other at industry news and stuff.
So when you celebrated prematurely, celebrated prematurely, and then
and then
we're doing this deal, and then 7 months of negotiations, and
7 months of negotiation, and some of the negotiations got really fiddly. We were all ravers, right? We were all going raving every weekend. One of the clauses we found 4.5 months in was, if anybody does drugs of any kind, this is the bit you might have to cut out, right? And I said, well, that's a deal breaker then. And it took a month to get past that piece, right? And me throwing accusations of everybody in advertising's on coke anyway, so how can you possibly, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was fraud.
Well, it's important to note, I mean, there's a provision that's protecting companies versus bad actors. And they set these things as, safeguards for a company and its liabilities. Sometimes it's important to note that those have been built by lawyers, those have been built in by risk mitigators. Totally. That's not always congruent with the way the industry operates or with the people actually do day to day.
The funny thing is that certainly my career for the last 8 or 9 years has been about how do you address risk? Yeah. Right. So I completely get it. I didn't at the time. I just didn't at the time. It was just this grand game where I was going to win because, blue hair and chutzpah.
So was the attorney taking the lead and then bringing it to you, or were you involved in a lot of the business and side negotiation?
It was mostly lawyer to lawyer, but I was reading all of the contracts every week and going back with my red lines. And I mean, it was a street by street battle. It really was. It was just crazy. It was crazy. Well,
to give you credit, the fact that it was a street by street battle means you were engaged, you were paying attention to it, and you didn't isolate yourself from the deal and only focus on the agency and the business.
No,
That's
but
to a credit to someone who doesn't scream with blue hair, I want to read contracts.
yeah,
Right?
no, absolutely. I mean, it was an education for me, and I used it
Yes.
as an education. It was the first time I come across anything like this. This was like, wow, this is a revelation. I think in retrospect, and now that I've done so many deals, so I've sold 6 agencies, I've bought 12 agencies. We now have an M&A company. You know, this is deals. I've chaired a bunch of agencies that we've sold. You know, a bunch of agencies in 2Y3X were sold. This is now stock in trade, right? Looking back, M&A is so seductive. It's so if you even hint that you might want to meet with a broker just to see how much your company might be worth, you are on greased skis. There is no way back from that first meeting. No matter how many people you meet, you get sucked into this seductive process.
Yep.
And that means that you're not doing sales or strategy, right? And for those 7 months, I don't think we did a piece of new business. Mm-hmm. Because you know, all of my focus was on this amazing new toy that I had, which was learning how contracts work and negotiation. And I'm going to beat, you know, David and Goliath, and I'm going to win this battle against this behemoth. Yeah, and so ever since then, every time I've gone into a negotiation like that, I've made sure that somebody else was running the company while I wasn't, because you ain't.
That's great advice. The environment that's created by you selling something you've created not only is seductive, but also has more yield than the business you're focusing on, right? You're going from incremental sales to shepherding clients, maybe hiring a few people here and there. And now you're talking to a room of people who've legitimized your business, who are offering you the future, mountains of money. Why would you pay attention to this business when you're trying to get that deal done?
And some of the kind of the argument that the holding companies use when they're buying an agency is, join us, we will give you all of those clients, the big clients that you don't have access to now because you're little, right? And we were going to get Tesco, and we were going to get this and that and the other, right? We were going to get these £1 million accounts. Unfortunately, there are 2 things that happen. One is you get a gift at the beginning to show that they're serious about you, you know, they want you to engage and love them, right? So you get this beginning gift, and then they wait for you to either leave or be really successful before giving you these big accounts, because they ain't going to risk their really big, precious prize accounts on some untried, untested little agency that they've just acquired, and they don't know whether or not you're going to be able to survive. Because when you sell your agency to somebody else, guess what? You've got a boss. Now, I never had a boss that didn't fire me. And I know that I'm quite like many agency owners, right? We don't want to be told how to do what we do or what to do. And even clients sometimes are bad enough, right? Me going in and suddenly having a boss and actually being on a board of Loan Partners UK, which itself had a boss, right? And being told what to do. 60% of agency owners who go into the Big Four don't survive their earnout. And the reason for that is it's almost impossible to thrive in a system that you rebelled against in the first place to such a degree that you went and started your own company rather than get a job.
Now, this brings up a very important point. If you are selling out, by all accounts, then what options really exist? Because the most financial winnings of building a company come from someone who has the ability to buy you and reward you for that. So there's not a lot of options. But you talk about that founders aren't used to having a boss. They do not last in the big networks.
I mean, listen,
why did you not last as, or let's use that as an example.
Perfect illustration for this, right? I'm at this point in my career, I'm a strategist. I've got blue hair. I'm waving my arms around. I'm inventing social stuff, right? I'm doing groundbreaking, innovative, interactive TV stuff and what have you. I had the, it was great. It was being an innovator and breaking stuff. And I have to say that I wasn't the world's greatest bookkeeper. And I had no idea what I was doing from a money point of view. I mean, I remember Andrew Robertson, who at the time ran Abbott Mead Vickers, sitting me down in his office. He called this meeting. I went to see him. He said, "How do you make money?" I said, "Doing great work." And he said, "No. How do you actually make money?" I said, "I don't know. We win awards." I didn't know what was going on. So I joined Lowe, and of course, once a month they fly me first class to New York. It's great, right? Put me up at the W Hotel, which had this wall which was like 18 feet high with a waterfall on it, right, next to the lift. I mean, this place was beyond swanky. To stay for a long weekend, so that on the Monday morning at 8 o'clock, I could present a spreadsheet that I simply did not understand to a bunch of people who didn't understand what I did for a living because they'd never used the internet. I mean, it was ludicrous. Trying to explain to accountants why Microsoft was a good client to have, even though they were paying us on 120 days. I mean, it was just bonkers.
Let's unpack that a bit, because although the administration of subsidiaries has evolved a bit, and there's a little bit more understanding of the business operations of various hierarchies of the organization, you referenced you are presenting the performance of the business that you operate to the stakeholders, to the general company, and you found that a departure from focusing on what it is you do really well,
which was at the time winning clients and winning awards and being famous, right? And I think that there's this as agency founders, especially small agency founders, when I say small agency, I mean anything up to about 10 million, that you've grown yourself from having started it in your, garage or whatever it is. You're not particularly sophisticated when it comes to balance sheets and all of that kind of stuff. You're not particularly sophisticated when it comes to return on capital employed, or share options, or risks. I mean, it was 10 years into my career before I discovered things like discount factors. I was I think I'd done my third sale before somebody mentioned that I could fix my discount factors. I'd taken it as read that there was nothing you could do about it because you're a small business, right? It's like, oh, well, we're going to discount you because you've got this client that's 40%. We're going to discount you because you haven't got a succession team. It's like, what's a succession team? I run the business myself. It's perfect, right? You are the bottleneck. I didn't know about things like 2y3x and what have you, where you can devolve responsibility. I didn't understand that it wasn't all on me to come up with the plan and make sure that people delivered it. So, I think there's no education for entrepreneurs. And that's why people join kind of little groups and peer groups and what have you, because at least they can compare notes about the struggles that they've got. But there's so little education. And I think the reason I wrote Scale at Speed, and the reason that I do what I do in my career now, is because if only I'd had that. I look back, I would have been on a yacht if I'd known anything that I know today.
Well, let me ask a follow-up to, if you knew what you knew today, would you have sold?
No, not in a million years.
This is a very important thing to unpack, right? When you look at, you were at a stage to where most of the things that you gained access to accelerated your education, your experiences so much more dramatically than just running the small business.
Oh, completely. I mean, it was I was suddenly exposed to the big wide world, right? It was like, oh, crikey. How does M&A work? How can I sell my next agency in such a way that it doesn't, kibosh everybody in the team.
And you're one of the best examples of someone who understood that you can start another agency, sell it, you can create things and divest it, and that's the way you progress business. It's the most successful way to scale, grow, and improve your quality of life. And at the end of the day, Felix, you were in a performance-based expectation with that company with IPG. So maybe this is an important topic for a lot of people to understand. Why is that okay? And what wasn't the best about it?
Why is that okay? I think, especially if you've got a succession team in place, right? If you've, I'm sorry, this is a shameless plug. If you've done Scale at Speed, or you've done 2Y3X, and you have your growth lab team and they are becoming your succession team, and you can literally go away for 3 months on sabbatical, and the company will continue to grow at 40 or 70% a year, then, and only then, is it great to sell on an earnout.
And it's a smart earnout.
It's a really smart earnout. Now, the holding companies, the model is fantastic. The model is fantastic. They're all modeled off the same thing. I mean, some of the holding companies were started in 1901, but Martin Sorrell, who I spent several hours on the phone once trying to sell him one of my agencies that needed rescuing. He invented the earnout, which was more or less self-financing. We're going to pay you 3 times your average profit over the average profit that you make over the next 3 years. We'll pay you 3 times that, right? Which costs 0, literally. And we all go, wow, that sounds like a lot of money. Great, we're going to make 3 times, but yeah, that doesn't quite work like that. So it's a brilliant wheeze, but it relies on management by spreadsheet and command and control top down. And you will join our group, and in the next 3 years, while you're doing your earnout, you'll either succeed or you'll fail. Now, if you succeed, it's great. We'll pay you, instead of paying a multiple of 3, we might pay you a multiple of 5. Now, bearing in mind that their multiple on the market is multiple of 30, it's chump change, right? Because they're worth $18 billion and you're worth 5 million, right? Or whatever. It's pocket change. They don't care. Now, if you don't succeed, you leave and you lose your earnout, so it's cost me even less. And I get all of your clients and the good staff, and I throw away the bad staff, and I integrate you with geometry or whatever it is, right? So it's a no-brainer, but it's brutal. It's a machine that sucks you in and spits you out, unless you are built to be the corporate person, in which case, why did you start an agency in the first place? So that holding company model is something that I have always loathed. And that's been compounded by subsequent deals where actually I did one deal a few years later. I decided to sell my agency, which at the time was the positioning was the world's leading CRM consultancy. ECRM consultancy, which it was. And I thought, great, okay, well, we'll sell this, but we'll go small. We'll sell it to a small roll-up that's got 6 or 7 agencies in it. It's listed, so it's got financing, but it's small and it's manageable, and I'll get to work directly with the CEO. I met Frank Lowe at Lowe, maybe, he'd have me around for dinner every 6 months, just to sort of show willing. I never met the CEO of Interpublic, right? Anyway, so I sold my agency. I managed to create a bidding war between 2 small roll-ups. And the one who lost, the finance director, and I had such fun in the negotiation that he and I became business partners later when we did our own roll-up together, the conversation group. Lovely man called Brian. But he was the losing party, and I'd had them on the phone one Monday night on hold while I was saying, well, Rod said that he'd give me an extra X to Brian, and then I'd say this to Brian, then I'd go back, I'd put Brian back on hold and I'd go back to Rod and say, well, Brian says he's going to do this. So I managed to nudge the price up by an extra £1 million, and Rod won. And Rod, absolutely wonderful man. He'd had a software company, he was a tech CEO, and he'd become CEO of this AIM listed roll up. And so we duly became, I thought this was great because I'll have influence here. I won't be reporting on a spreadsheet that I still don't understand, because Rod will be responsible for the spreadsheet, and I'll just get on board and we'll just, you know, we'll be rock stars and it'll be great. And then and the problem with going into a smaller machine is that personalities dominate. And so there became this sort of, oh, you're the new people. Well, this is our territory, kind of thing, from the people who are already in the group. And us trying to be very humble and sort of respectful and so on. And then unfortunately, Rod got ousted as CEO in a very nasty boardroom coup. Suddenly I wasn't reporting to a very lovely man. I was reporting to the person who had made my life hell for the previous year in not welcoming my agency into the group. So that was awful. And then I watched them slowly destroy the agency. And even though, you know, we were bringing in millions, we were by far the most profitable entity within this roll-up. Revenue was being stripped out of our agency and put into the bigger agency, which is awful to see. And so I embarked on a second 7-month legal battle. I should have learned my lesson the first time. And at the end of the 7 months, I managed to buy the agency back for £1, for £1. And I got the sort of shredded shell back of my agency, and then applied everything by that I'd understood about scaling. Took it straight back up from more or less 0 to 3 million in a year, and sold it again. So
you talked about you talked about the types of transactions, but you didn't get specific around them. So it might be helpful to know, when you were approached, were they things that made sense to you, meaning a degree of cash, an earnout? Did you get some, you sat on a board, so potentially you had some equity or some options in those businesses? What did it look like? And did the offer from the big four subsidiary versus the small roll-up, what was the difference between those two?
Very little, other than that we had made ourselves so attractive in the first case by being the world's most awarded, and pretty much stalking the buyer that we wanted until they made us an offer, and then refusing the offer. And looking back on that, I mean, the deal that we did was a multiple of 12 times EBITDA.
For total enterprise value?
Yeah.
For total purchase price, you had a 12x EBITDA.
No. It was 12x EBITDA over the following 3 years. So we sold for 4 times more than anybody else sold for at our size. And we were, at the time, we were sub a million agency, right? I don't mean million EBIT, I mean million revenue.
Yeah, year 2 going to market is pretty quick.
I mean, it was honestly the best deal I've ever seen anybody do. And we did it through just, I don't know, as I say, chutzpah. But the second deal was much more rational, much more sensible. And then obviously buying it back for £1 was a steal. You know, I bought, for whatever it was, $1.5 million revenue for £1. But yeah, the deal structuring in the second instance was pretty much the same. It was, we'll give you some cash up front on day one. Actually, we'll give you all the cash that you've got in your bank account, right? And then we'll give you a multiple over the next 3 or 4 years as an earnout. And had it worked, again, we'd have been very well off indeed. So it was a pretty good deal. It was just the problem that I had failed to address was, and this is this is central to all scaling, all successful M&A, everything that you do as an agency founder, core values is the fulcrum around which every single action, every single decision, every single success or failure turns. If you don't share the same core values as the people you are joining, or if you're in the acquisition game of the people that you are acquiring, then it will fail. And it happened at Lowe, and I'm still friends with some of them, but my God, I'm not with others. And by the time that Rod got ousted, I was suddenly left with nobody who shared my own values, and nobody who had any integrity whatsoever. So it was a brutal, eye-opening experience of, oh, it's not about how good you are. It's not about the quality of your work. It's not about how happy you are in your agency. It's about who you are going to end up in bed with. Because if you don't share values, you ain't got nothing.
To do a deal, or at least to increase the probability of a successful deal, it must be culturally aligned. Part of that cultural alignment is core values, how you approach the world, how you treat people, how you want to be treated. And ultimately, if you want to see the erosion of the value, sell out for the highest possible price with people who don't share your core values. And it's interesting that a significant amount of the biggest offers come from the entities and businesses that don't share your core values.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Private equity, perfect example. They're not in it for the same reasons you are. They don't understand, and they don't care. They want a return. And actually, you are one of 10 companies that they're buying, and as long as the 10th company produces the return, the other 9 could go hang. And frankly, you're going to be one of the 9. So,
private equity in the United States is the most successful business model for a reason. What they do is they take money, they give 80% to a business, to a founder, and then they say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to spend the next 3 years, 2 to 3 years growing you. We're going to remove all the things you're not good at. You're going to work for us and sell. And then at the end of that period of time, we're going to sell it for much more than we bought it. And that has created such consistent returns that it's very attractive from a financial perspective to be a part of it. And you get tied to our initial discussion, which is deals are seductive. The money being proposed might be life-changing for you and your family and your net worth and your historical net worth. And it's hard to say no when the pageantry of I want to do something with you and I like you is all you see.
Yeah.
With all this doom and gloom, though, Felix, who should, other than culturally aligned, who should people sell to? Like we've listed a lot of people potentially who don't qualify as good people to sell to, right? And gave certain stories. I want to make sure we leave the listener with, okay, but I'm in the same situation. Based on Felix's stories and his experiences and what Peter's saying about the various buyers, I'm scared to sell this to anyone. How do I tread this? So who do I sell to?
Right. No matter what, core values is the one non-negotiable, right? Somebody who is not like you, and I don't mean this in a where do they come from, what's their education, what's their age, racial profile, all of that kind of stuff. I don't mean that. What I mean is, if your core value is honor, and their core value is return on investment at all above everything else, then you are mismatched, and one of you is going to get a nasty surprise. So now, if you can then say, okay, well, I've now got 3 different offers, all from people who share my core values, this is where it becomes interesting, because then it's about alignment of vision and goals. Now, I want to change the way that the advertising and marketing industries, agency industries work. I want to kind of destroy that command and control, top down, running by a spreadsheet, nasty micromanaged kind of approach to that holding companies use and many roll-ups use. And I want to make it about people power and empowering rising talent and creating something that's progressive and visionary and wonderful, right? So if you as an agency don't share that kind of view of the world, we're probably not going to do a deal together. And I think it's really important. Now, if you are just in it for the money, I'll give you an example here. My last deal when I owned an agency, now bearing in mind at the time I was also CEO of an agency roll-up myself. It was a very progressive one. It was cool. But I also had this agency, and I had decided that I was done with running agencies. Like you all, you know, I was fed up with people coming and saying, "Boss, can I have 5 minutes?" Right? It's one of those, like, sort of, that had become my big red line. And I just decided I wanted out. And so I did the deal with somebody who said, "You can leave once we've signed." And I already had my succession team in place. I had a managing director, I had a creative director, a client secretary. I wasn't running the business. I was off doing something else. I was running a roll-up. So I had become chair of my own agency. So me leaving, literally, there wasn't a ripple. I mean, really bad for your ego, but nobody missed me whatsoever. Now, that was great because I got what I wanted out of it. And I think that you need to really examine what you want. Is it a ton of cash? And therefore, I am prepared to kowtow to the man for the next 3 years and just tug my forelock and do whatever they say. Or am I doing this because I've got a passion for something in my business? In which case, find a buyer who also shares that passion. Because otherwise, you're just going to be miserable. If you're miserable, your agency is going to tank. If your agency tanks, you're not going to make those millions.
And to your last point, if you want to leave, make sure you're set up so you can leave and have a buyer who is confident and satisfied with the business if you leave.
When we buy agencies, we buy them because we have shared visions. If the owner wants to leave, then we have shared visions and values with the leadership team. And once we acquire the agencies, we put in place 2Y3X and the scale at speed process, and we nurture and grow the succession team so that the founder 6 or 9 months later can say, "Do you know what? I'm no longer needed. I can go off and do my eco startup, or I can retire, or I can go up into group level and become part of the group leadership team." Because we understand that that's their goal, we can accommodate it, right? And I think that you can't pull the wool over your buyer's eyes as to what your real motivations are. We've seen it all before. We know, right? And much more importantly, you can't pull the wool over your own eyes, because somewhere under there, you know too.
At the end of the day, our job as the buyer is to give you what you want in a way that we can rationalize and create a multiple of return. And if you're not clear about what you want and you're not honest, no one can give it to you. And although we've talked a lot about deals, M&A, running businesses, it's the same in life. Fundamentally, if you're true to who you are, other people can figure out if you're the right person that they want to be around. Cultural alignment, the people you surround yourself with feed you energy or they take it away. And for some reason, when we put on our business hats, we throw out the human side and think differently. So
it's all about the human side. It's all about, we're in a people business, whether we like it or not, no matter how much ChatGPT writes it all for us. The reality is, this is about humans dealing with humans and creating future for ourselves.
And at the end of the day, a deal is between a human and a human. AI is probably not going to negotiate your business on behalf of a buyer and a seller anytime soon. You're sitting side by side with someone who you're communicating with. And if you cannot connect human to human, it's not a deal. Well, Felix, you've given the listeners a tremendous amount of value and stories. I appreciate you as my business partner and mentor. You not only have the right perspective, but you've also lived and have demonstrated through your own actions what people can do to either have the outcome that they want, both in business, but also in life. So you practice what you preach. I appreciate you. And thank you for sharing your knowledge with the audience.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you for listening to Agency Acquisitions and Exits. Like and subscribe. You can follow us on Spotify and on YouTube. We post videos sharing stories from industry experts about how they sold or acquired agencies. If you know of someone who should be on the show to talk about their agency and their exit stories, look for our email in the comments below, and we'd love to highlight them on a future episode. As always, thank you for listening. We appreciate you. Stay safe.